My name is Anya, and I'm the oldest of three sisters. My mother, Doreen, was married twice. I'm from her first marriage to my biological father, who constantly cheated on her. She divorced him when I was still very young. My sisters, Clarissa and Emily, are from her second marriage to my stepfather, Greg. I look a lot like my father: fair skin, ash blonde hair, calm nature. My mother was never truly close to me. She was polite, but always somewhat distant, as if my appearance reminded her of the painful time with my father. Clarissa and Emily, on the other hand, regularly received expensive gifts, designer clothes, elaborate birthday parties. I got things too, but not in the same league. Greg, my stepfather, quietly made sure I didn't go entirely empty-handed. As I got older, he'd slip me extra money to supplement my meager allowance. My mother claimed she kept me on such a tight budget to teach me discipline. If I wanted makeup or clothes, I should get a job, she said. Only I was denied a reasonable allowance. My sisters always got whatever they wanted. Greg owns a trucking company with several employees and is often on the road himself. But he has a good heart. Every year on her birthday, my mother received a new designer handbag from him. It became something of a running joke between them. She didn't even wear most of them, but she collected each one and gushed about them. One entire display cabinet was filled with handbags, and in the bedroom stood a mirrored wardrobe reserved for the special pieces. 2 years ago, my mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Clarissa was working at a big law firm in Chicago, and Emily was deep into a research project at Stanford. Both calmly stated that they couldn't scale back their careers. Greg tried to manage as best he could, but his routes made it difficult. So he hired a nurse who was promptly driven off after just a few days by my mother's attitude. Greg asked me if I could take over her care, knowing that my employer allowed me to work from home. So I moved back into my childhood home. The first few weeks were tough. My mother didn't allow for any closeness, but would talk endlessly about her handbags. Which one Clarissa should have, which one would look best on Emily, what she had already promised to whom. My name never came up. I listened and said nothing. But it hurt deeply. Maybe I would have quit, but Greg transferred a generous amount of money to me each month, which kept me going. I did it for him, not for my mother. One evening, after she yelled at me again for supposedly washing her too roughly, even though I had handled her with kid gloves, I secretly took the first designer handbag from her collection. She was asleep and didn't notice. In my room, I opened the old built-in wardrobe. Behind it, well hidden, was a large hollow space only I knew about. It had once been my secret hideout for diaries and love letters back in my teenage years. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with the bag. It wasn't theft. I wasn't planning to take it back to my apartment. I just wanted to make it inaccessible to my spoiled sisters and leave it in the house. And then, one by one, I started removing all the handbags from my mother's room. To avoid drawing attention, I ordered cheap replicas online, placed them where the originals had been, and stored the real bags in my secret space. I didn't tell anyone. When my mother died, my sisters came to the funeral. Designer blazers, sunglasses, perfectly made-up mournful expressions. Barely had the reception ended when they started rummaging through Doreen's walk-in closet, inspecting clothes, shoes, perfumes. They looked at the handbags like they were jewels. "Mom would have wanted us to have them," Clarissa said. I stayed silent. Greg watched everything with his usual calm demeanor. When Emily opened the jewelry box and took out a few pieces, he said firmly, "Anya always admired those." The two of them looked at each other, then over at me. Clarissa shrugged, set aside a ring and a necklace, and said with a patronizing gesture, "Then you take them." That was all that was left. The next day, my sisters said their goodbyes. They packed up their loot into suitcases and bags and loaded everything into their cars. Greg and I stood in the driveway. They gave us quick hugs. Once they were gone, Greg and I went back into the house. "How long do you plan to stay?" he asked later as I was cleaning up in the kitchen. 2, maybe 3 months. I need some time to get back on my feet." He nodded and said in a quiet voice, "If it were up to me, you could stay forever." I hugged him for comfort, but my mind was made up. My own life was waiting. 2 months later, during the move, he came into the hallway carrying a box I hadn't packed. I was a little surprised, but he smiled conspiratorially. I'd rather carry this one myself, he said, carefully placing it in my car and giving me a wink. We drove to my apartment together. He and one of his employees helped carry the boxes inside. The air smelled stale. I hadn't lived there in a long time. When I opened the mysterious box, my eyes widened in surprise. All the original handbags were neatly lined up inside, and on top of them, a new one in elegant forest green. Inside was an envelope. It contained a check for $250,000. On the back, in Greg's handwriting, it said, "A small token for taking care of your mother. She failed to see you, but I'm proud to be your father." I cried tears of joy and called Greg right away to thank him with all my heart. We meet once a month for dinner now. He tells me about his travels. I tell him about my job and my friends. At our last dinner, he said with visible amusement, "Your sisters found out the bags were all fakes and asked if I knew anything about it." He paused for effect. "And what did you say?" I asked. The chemo treatments were expensive, and to help cover the costs, I sold the handbags. To keep Doreen from getting emotionally upset, I replaced them with replicas. Greg smirked at his own story. "And they just accepted that?" "Not right away. They asked if my company was in financial trouble, which I denied." "Then you could have used company funds," Clarissa said. And I looked at her sternly. "You're a lawyer, and you think it's okay to steal the money I used to pay my employees and maintain my trucks?" Greg laughed again. She turned bright red and left shortly after. Emily didn't stay long either. "Dad, are you really strapped for cash? Do you want me to pay you back?" With a gentle smile, Greg patted my hand. "Your mother's treatment was covered by insurance, and even if I had paid for it myself, Anja, I'm a wealthy man. Your sisters have no idea how wealthy, and I don't plan on telling them." I was moved that he trusted me. A lot has happened since then. He established a private foundation and transferred the company shares to it. Instead of driving one of the trucks himself, he now travels the world, cruises and all. The business is run by a longtime employee, and I manage the foundation for Greg. Clarissa and Emily each received $1.5 million. "But your company must have been worth more than that," they said. "You can take the money now or inherit nothing later, because I plan to spend every last cent before I die," he told them. They took the money and grudgingly signed a contract stating that their inheritance had been paid out during the benefactor's lifetime. When Greg passes away, the foundation will transfer directly to me, but I hope he still has many good years ahead. Financially, I'm doing well. The foundation provides me with a monthly stipend I once could only dream of. I moved to San Francisco with all the designer handbags. That's where I always wanted to live.